Hello, boys and girls. This is Tanya.
And hi, I am Eli.
And this is once again another episode of ET Speaks. Today, we are talking about older women, younger men, 5 years later. We are almost exactly 5 years into our relationship. Actually, November makes 5 years. So we are 4.5 years into our relationship. And so we want to give you guys an update of the highs and lows, the ups and downs of being a May-December romance where the guy is younger and the woman is older. Say something fantabulous.
I like this subject. She always laughing.
Okay, so where do we begin? Where do we start? So,
In a land not so long ago,
oh my dear God in heaven.
he indeed is living there
Yes, he is.
peacefully.
Okay, so let's talk, sir. We're supposed to be having a conversation. What's going on? Talk to me. Talk to the folks.
I am knee deep in thought.
Oh, here we go.
But no,
Here we
it's been an interesting road. I've learned a lot. You've learned a lot. We've both learned a lot from each other. Because again, when you marry or you're in a relationship, there are the knowns and then you have the unknowns. When you get married, you're marrying the unknowns.
Elaborate, sir.
So there's little things that both parties do that you don't really notice at first. But when you get married, those little things eventually grow into habits or patterns. And it's easy to brush it off or not notice it because even when you're living together, you don't pay attention to it.
So there's this thing they call the honeymoon phase in any relationship is when you are first dating. When you're first dating, you kind of are on your best behavior, so to speak.
Like a mask, almost.
Right. And so once you've been together for a while, or once you get married, then all of a sudden the honeymoon phase is over, and now you have like this, the reality starts to set in.
True.
So let's revisit, because I know the first time we did this, it was right after we got married. We talked about this, and we had been together for a year and a half when we got married.
True.
And so then, well, actually, it was on our 2-year talking anniversary. So our wedding anniversary is April 16th, 2022. And so we started talking on that day in 2020, and 2 years later we got married. So what our first initial conversation about older women, younger men was just kind of over the surface. I think we're going to go in depth in the next hour and really talk about the highs and lows and some of the struggles that we've had, that we've overcome, and some stuff we're still working on. But I think this is a credible conversation because there are other couples that are out there like ours, and also because even a couple that's not got an age gap may be able to glean something from the conversation.
And it was a YouTube video that I found that I'm definitely we're gonna drop the link in the video. We're gonna drop the link to the video in the
description for this.
In the YouTube video that I was watching is when people talk about your perception is your reality.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But the other side of that too is there's perception versus perspective.
I just learned the difference. I watched a video on that. I just learned the difference
between. Was that the video that you saw?
I don't know, but don't play it.
So there are things that even in a marriage, there are things in a marriage that are perception based and perspective based. And a lot.
And it's the difference between point of view and vantage point. My point of view is how I see a specific thing based on my personal experiences, based on me as a person. My vantage point is where I'm looking at it from. So like I could look at something. I'm sitting in my room right now looking at microwave. But if I go out of my door and I look at the microwave, I'm looking at it from a different vantage point. Then if I open my door and I go into another room, then I'm looking at it from a further distance, and that vantage point, the microwave stays the same, but it looks smaller based on the distance I am from the object. So vantage point is very different than point of view.
And it's also important to be able to understand, okay, if I'm a talker, let me talk less, because if I'm talking all the time, then that's a problem, because it's like having tunnel vision, like in the movie Biker Boys, as an example. Like the only thing that Lawrence Fishburne was seeing was the wind, not the road or the steps that it takes to get there. All you are is you, the motorcycle, your helmet, the starting line, and the finish. And then everything to the left and right of you isn't even there, like it's gone. So as a person that talks a lot, I have to be mindful. I have to be very mindful and very strategic on not talking too much to the point to where I'm missing the little pieces, or I'm not willing to stop and pause and wait to see what you're gonna say, because there may be something that I might have missed or might not have understood or threw people off, and I don't want to do that when there's dialogue or having a conversation.
And I think that's something that both of us have struggled with a little bit. Like, for example, because you felt the need to be heard, because you felt like you weren't heard in your household with your family. So you have this desire to always get your point across, even if the point is not relevant to the conversation. Or needed at the time. You will still push to get your point across because you are still trying to get that child inside of you to be heard. And I'm not being, has nothing to do with your age, because we all have an inner
like
child.
That assertiveness, it's like I have to prove a point to myself when it's not really needed.
And I find that, and this is just basic relationship stuff. This has nothing to do with the age gap, because I've dealt, and being older and having been married before, I've dealt with the stuff we're now talking about with people that were older than me. So that his age has nothing to do, or my older age or his younger age has nothing to do with the stuff we're talking about. A lot, because I used to battle, and I still kind of do a little bit of not being heard, but for me, I'll shut down. I'll just stop talking versus fighting to be heard, because it's not the energy it takes to fight to be heard becomes an argument. Whereas if I just get quiet, if the person that you're talking to, and this could be anybody, not just your spouse, if the person that you're talking about cares that you just stop talking, they're going to say, well, why did you stop talking? And then you can go back and share your point, or tell them why, hey, I stopped talking because this X, Y, and Z. But there's a part of you that's still wounded from your childhood. And so because of that, we find ourselves in this space where you're always trying to be heard. Even like in this space, us doing the podcast, we go out of our way to be polite and try and make sure that the other one gets to talk. But when we're having a heated discussion and it's not for public display, it does not always work like that. Sometimes it becomes this thing where he'll hear me say, oh, no, you got it. And when I say that, that means I'm done talking, because I don't want to argue. And I don't want a conversation to become an argument. So I throw my hands up and I'm like, no, you got it. And he hates that. You hate that.
Because it's kind of like that, I guess you could say, in a joking way, but still staying on the topic. It's kind of like the space of, I'm going to say what I say, I'm going to drop the mic, and then you just walk away. Like there's no explaining it. And it's almost like a form of disrespect, really, if you look at it.
Okay.
Because as a kid, when it came to old school upbringing, you couldn't just say what it was and walk away, Because even if mom, dad, grandma, even if they weren't saying anything, until they told you that they were done with you, you couldn't move.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up under that too.
So as adults, it's being able to just say, you got it. It's like our upbringings kind of clash.
But no, that for me, that's not back to upbringing. And okay, so therein lies the issue. Because not that I've been grown longer than you, but I've been outside longer than you have. So and when I say outside, in other words, I've been away from my family. I've been an adult and not had even at your age, even at 30, if I'm having a conversation with somebody and I say, you got it, I'm not asking for permission for somebody to allow me to walk away or be done with a conversation, because I have been on my own since I was one day shy of 19 years old. So that reverence for other adults, because I looked at myself as a lesser adult, has been gone for a while. Whereas we met in 2020, you were still living at home with your parents. When you moved in with me, which is a whole other kettle of fish. But when you moved in with me, that was your first adventure outside. Was you went from living at home with your parents to live-in girlfriend to fiance to married.
That is a true statement.
Right. So your reverence for that mindset of adulting or adulthood, you learned on the fly. And during this episode, I'm probably going to reveal something because it was pivotal in our relationship, but it won't be right this second. But I'm going to reveal something that has already been talked about on another podcast episode. Check out Being Unboxed. 36 days later, good episode. I was interviewed by my business partner and co-conspirator, Renee Ambush. Shout out to Renee. So if you listen to that, or if you ever check out Being Unboxed along with the other podcasts that we have on the D.O.D radio network, then you have heard my testimony. But I'm going to reveal some stuff later on in this episode because it's pivotal. And it did some things in our relationship, good and bad. But go ahead. In terms of talking about that dropping the mic, walking away moment, like, how does that make you feel realistically?
It's literally like, who are you? How do you get to be able to do that? Like, we weren't finished. And that goes back to the Bible verse that talks about you don't allow the sun to go down on any of your problems, because whatever the little things or the residuals in that moment that don't get taken care of basically turn into a snowball. And of course, I can say with dealing with letters,
ADHD, for those that don't understand.
That's a huge thing, because now it's like a residue or a scab that eventually gets scraped at later on down the road. Realize that not taking care of it will cause issues, because now it's gonna come up again. Whatever I mess up on, whether it be out in public, whether it be around you, whether it be wherever, that piled up with whatever it is in that moment is moving so fast. Now the root cause was, we didn't take care of this or didn't take care of that.
And that's valid. That's a valid point. A lot of times where I say you got it is when I feel like A, the conversation isn't going anywhere. B, I know something to be true and you're saying it's not, or you're trying to refute something and I'm like, but no, I have evidence. I know that this thing is true, whatever it is, and you're denying it or saying that it's not true. At that point, we're just going back and forth. It's almost like me beating my head up against a brick wall. And rather than continue to argue, I'm going to say you got it or agree to disagree and stop talking, because it's not going to get resolved in that moment. And I heard a marriage counselor say once, if you know that you can't come to a resolution peacefully, it's best to walk away and come back to it later. And I think where you tend to, once you get into the heat of the moment, you're not willing to let it go. So you become like a pit bull about it. Like, you're like, no, because da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, no, you got it. Because it's not going anywhere. We're literally arguing in a circle, and I don't like that. So I would much rather table it and bring it back up later than to continue and escalate it into something big. Like I remember once telling you that I said, hey, you got it. And you kept going. And I said, listen, this is becoming an argument. I do not wish to argue. You got it. Let me stop talking. Because I know me and my temper will go, because I live self-confession. I have started cussing a lot. And I'm trying to get back to this place where I don't cuss at all.
I'll be the blame.
It's not just you, it's all types of stuff.
Because I know my mouth hasn't been the best, but again, being able to work on that. But to interject into what you were talking about.
Okay, go ahead.
This was a question that I found on the internet.
Oh, heck.
The internet.
He's Googling.
Yes. How does your understanding of submission and headship in marriage align with your faith?
Woo! Man, you went there. Good God. Okay. Jesus. And some people, because there's all these cute little cougar terms. Like if you're a cougar, which is a female that's older than her dude, then your man is your cub. And I made a joke like that one time. And, hearty har. I don't fancy myself as a cougar because, God forbid, something happened to this relationship. I'm not going to go find the next younger man. That's not my forte. Like I fell in love with him. He asked me to marry him. We got married. This is not, I'm looking for young guys to deal with. That's not.
I could definitely say I was nervous, to be honest.
About there we go with them ADHD conversations.
I was really nervous, to even ask that, because it is a lot to live up to.
You just turned the corner. Okay, so.
But to redirect, and we're gonna go back to that.
Okay.
But I want to break this question down. Okay, we understand how does your understanding, but the first word that I want to kind of get into is, and this is a word that a lot of people, it rubs them the wrong way.
Submission.
Especially with this generation.
Submission.
Yeah. Because
submission.
Yeah.
Submit. Finish him. No, I was kidding.
So let me break this down.
You want to take a deep dive into that? So while you're looking that up, can I say something?
Yes.
A lot of people, and I went into the cub cougar thing and there was a point I was trying to make. Because I don't view him as my cub. This is a grown man who I submitted myself under to marry. So I'm going somewhere, and then you can go in the direction that you're going in. So because of it, I don't want to be the head of the household. Just because I have more expertise in a lot of areas, because I'm older, there's a lot of times when he'll divert to me and go, well, babe, what do you think we should do? Because I have experience, and I'll tell him, well, this is what I think based on, and not in these exact words, but this is what I think based on this, and this. I think we need to go in this direction. But ultimately for me, I remember telling his aunt once, or talking to him about his aunt, and me saying, because there are certain family members that thought I ran the relationship because I was older, and that's the exact opposite. A lot of the things that happen in our relationship are because that's what he wants. And so I'm not gonna overstep his will. Now we'll talk about it, but me being his wife means that I'm submitted. I'm not his mother, I'm his wife. So I'm submitted up under his headship, and he has the final say. Now, we're going to discuss a thing. The only way he doesn't get the final say is if what he's saying goes against the word of God or what God has to say on the subject.
So if we look up the word submission on Google, it says, and I quote, in the Bible, submission is presented as a principle of willingly yielding to authority, guidance, or the will of another with humility and respect. It is not about losing one's voice or giving up values, but about recognizing God's designed role in working together in unity. Submission in the Bible is often highlighted in the context of marriage, where wives are instructed to submit to their husbands, and husbands are instructed to love their wives as Christ loves the church. So when you're looking at that, even at its base level, one of the things that can make it hard for a wife to submit to her husband is if a wife or a female or woman growing up didn't have the best example. And I'm not saying this is all cases.
I'm saying that it's all cases
No.
Today, like 90% of them.
No, what I'm saying in general is, and this is one of the, and shout out to one of the producers of the show, Tiago. He's a really good engineer.
Mentality every Thursday at 7. Okay, go.
If you, him or her, listen at 7, one of the things that I've learned from him is we have to get out of the pattern of making general statements, because we can't
generalizations.
We can't generalize something because we're not all of those people.
Yeah, you're right.
We're us. So when you're looking at it, growing up, as a female, if you didn't have a positive example in your household of submission, or one person submitting to another, it'll cause your view to become very skewed, to be like, I don't have to do that because I didn't, like, that's not, like, no, I don't respect that, or I don't agree.
And watch this though. That goes back to vantage point versus POV, perspective versus perception. Because from a child's point of view, watching their parents, and if one of the parents is abusive, and I will not necessarily say the man to the woman all the time, because there are WWBM women who beat their men. And so it's not as often, but it does happen. And so because it does happen, whatever the vantage point of the child growing up in the household, watching their parents, and submission doesn't look right, or even worse, a single parent household where there is no submission at all. So the whole idea of a single mother and or father, well, not so much the father, because we're talking about godly submission. So we're talking about usually a wife to a husband. So you have a single mom who either was married and got divorced, was never married but had a boyfriend and they're no longer together, or has never been in a relationship outside of having their child. Now you start looking at those dynamics. There was no submission example. Mom Dukes didn't have to submit to nobody. So because she didn't have to submit to nobody, you decide to get married, and now your husband is the head of your household in true form, and you looking at him like, sucker, I'm not submitting to you.
Who are you?
Who are you? And so the family dynamic is different in a lot of households. So because it's different in a lot of households in today's society, from my point of view, from my vantage point, looking at the world or whatever, ooh, nice. Looking at the world or whatever, he finding good stuff on the internet. I see that the submission is broken because women are not in position to want to submit to their husband. We had a couple get married at our church, and they went live with their wedding. And when it came time to the vows, and I'm not outing them at all because they're an amazing couple. And if you've seen this clip, if you know, you know. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say. But so my pastor went to the vows, and it was love, honor, and obey. And she looked at my pastor. She was like having a hard time saying that. And she looked at him. She looked at my pastor. She said, "We didn't talk about this in marriage counseling." And he said, "Yes, we did." And so it went viral. Like, people were clipping it. People were using that as an example of American women versus women in other countries. I told my boy, I said, "Hey, you need to get paid. People are clipping your video. Y'all need to be getting residuals from this." But the reality of it is, her reaction wasn't foreign or out of the norm. Her reaction was, some people don't even use those vows because in their mind, I'm not obeying you. You're not my daddy. Or worse yet, I didn't have a daddy in the house, so who are you for me to obey? Some versions of it says love, honor, and submit yourself. But that's only for the woman. That part of the vow is not for the guy. And so for just looking at it, submission is a thing. And
would that lead to say, in some moments, which again, you never want there to be, you never want there to be a space where either of us make a statement and it allows the enemy to come in and take what is said out of context, because like what you just said, someone could hear that and say, well, there goes another example of why I don't need to get married, because even in their lifestyle world or their religious, in the Christian world, the Bible has all of these rules for the woman, but for the man, all it says is this. But when you look at it, you have to be very careful about what's going on around you, who you're listening to, who's in your ear, what information that you're collecting, like your peace, your happiness, your mental stability, your space. It has to be very positive, because this world that we live in is very dark, it's wicked, it's corrupted. So if you're easily molded by all the wrong things, it can entice you to look at any scenario, any situation in a bad light.
But you know what though, as Christians, so when I'm gonna double back.
Okay.
When you said the Bible says all these things about the woman or the wife, but it only has a few things about a man or the husband, that's actually not true. Now Corinthians is heavy on the wife. But then when you go back and you start really looking in the Bible, what a man's responsibility is for example, the Bible calls for an elder to be the husband of one wife, to be sober-minded, to be the head of his household and the high priest of his home. The Bible also states that a man can't run anything else unless he can run his own home. Being the high priest of a home means that you have to go to God on behalf of everybody in your house. That means your wife, your kids. It's a lot of responsibilities that a man has. And so people concentrate on that one scripture in the Bible that talks about marriage, and it pinpoints what's going on for the wife. But there's a lot that the husband has responsibility for.
So I looked this up, and this is on Google again. Googling. The Bible describes a man's responsibilities primarily as one of love, leadership, and care within the family, and as a follower of God, reflecting his own leadership and care for humanity. Key themes including loving his wife, leading his family, and providing for their needs. Elaboration. Loving his wife. A man's primary responsibility within marriage is to love his wife, mirroring Christ's love for the church.
Okay, pause right there. The scripture says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church, for he gave his life for it. So literally,
this love should be a source of joy and fulfillment for both partners. Number 2, or did I cut you off?
You did, but it's okay. But literally, so because I need to finish this point because it matters. The weight of it is that if bullets is flying as a husband, you need to be willing to get in front of your wife and the kids and catch those bullets for her. Because Jesus died on the cross for us, for the church. He literally died. So your submission to the husbandly duty is that your life is expendable to save the life of your wife and your kids. That's a lot weightier, actually. It's almost like in football, the head coach is always the heavy. Head coach takes the fall. Head coach gets all the blame. Head coach gets the praise too if they win. But if they lose,
I mean, you also have the quarterback.
Head coach gets right, but you're getting into the details. But the head coach, if the team loses, he's the worst coach in the universe. Now, mind you, he's not out there on the field. He's not running those plays. He's not doing none of it. But it does not matter. If they don't win, he is the devil. That's how the husband is viewed.
But he's the middle, because
In reality,
but even on the field, because as the coach, you have to be you're the one that's supposed to vet each person and you're supposed to be the one that can look at a person and vet whether or not that's the correct position for them to be in, because you can't always have a lineman, or you can't always have an offensive tackle play running back. Even if he fits that description, that might not be the correct qualification or role for him to be in. That offensive lineman may need to stay as an offensive lineman, and that running back, or abbreviation RB, may just need to play the running back.
Okay, so pause right there. So now translate that information over to a marriage. A lot of times people marry girlfriends that ain't wives. Every girlfriend is not a wife. Every girl, and I'm going to say this again for the people in the back. Every girlfriend, every person that you date is not wife material. So because every person that you date is not wife material, and you wifing up, help me Holy Ghost, controversy, and you wifing up the concubine, you wifing her up because you bought her a booty, a BBL, you wifing her up because she's good in bed, you're wifing her up because all your friends said, man, that girl is bad, this, that, and the third, and then you go and you expect her to be a wife, and she's not that. She can't cook, she won't clean up, she trying to get you to buy Birkin bags every 10 minutes. At that point, as the head coach, you done picked the wrong teammate. The qualifications that you chose her from are not the right qualifications. So then you can't get mad at sis if she not doing wife stuff, because she don't know how. That's not who she is. So when I likened it unto a head coach situation, I likened it unto a head coach situation because that's real. As the head coach, you have to know that once you marry this person, the decision that you've made of, okay, she's not going to submit, or she's not that type of person. Her upbringing, her family background, none of that says that this woman is going to make you a good, godly wife. So you as the man, as the head of the household, you thinking with your little head and not your big head. At that point, you get what you get. And so then submission becomes this thing of, I ain't submitting to you. Did it blankety blank blank.
This is how I feel in that moment.
There's a call to law. But so go ahead and elaborate on what you elaborating on. Because like I said, as the head of the household, there is a lot of pressure in that space because you're the head coach. And so people think that, or maybe, no, let me not say it that way. You tend to think that because I'm older than you, and because I've lived, and because you feel like I deserve all these things, sometimes you tend to drastically make mistakes because, how do I live up to her expectations? She's already been hurt before. I don't want to hurt her. And inevitably, by putting self pressure on you, then you make crazy mistakes. And now I'm looking at you crazy. But the reality of it is, bless you. The reality of it is, it's the journey. I'm not expecting you to be King Lear or Donald Trump or Jeff Bezos, and you got to buy me Birkins and brand new cars every week. We're on a journey, and whatever we get, we're going to get together.
So step 2, or
bring that back around, because I cut you off in that moment.
No, you're good. Part 2 of what it was saying. This love should be a source of joy and fulfillment for both partners. Responsibility number 2, leading the family. The Bible describes a man as the head of the household, responsible for leading his family spiritually, emotionally, and practically. This involves providing for their needs, both physically and spiritually, and guiding them in God's way.
You want me to comment, don't you?
Of course.
Yeah, you want to comment right there. And I think that's where, because of, and being hot, humble, open, and transparent, I think that is where, because this is a season where we've dealt with a whole lot of stuff. There was some stuff that I had to deal with personally. And once I dealt with that stuff, it's like now God is having us to really deal with the foundation of our marriage. and to strengthen that foundation. And so a lot of things that had been buried are now coming to the surface. And I've dealt with my track record on being a wife and what that means is really, really very old school and very traditional. And so I feel like my position as his wife is literally as a helpmeet. My position is to assist him in being the head of the household and not to override him or take over. And people make silly comments towards us as a couple sometimes, because sometimes when he doesn't know what to do, I will step in and say or do, but that's not me usurping his authority, but it tends to be perceived that way. But nobody knows, like right now we're having this conversation with y'all, but nobody knows the conversations we have about certain, like we had an incident one time where somebody was allowing us to use a vehicle, and the husband wanted to hear like my husband's plan or whatever. And these were things that we had talked about. And a lot of times, specifically with males in authority, my husband will not step back but he tends to be apprehensive. And so I basically started to explain what our plan was. And the guy, because he was super duper old school pastor, real conservative, he was like, okay, I hear your wife, but I want you to tell me blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it becomes hard because people think I'm trying to have him be Mr. Submissive Husband, and that ain't what I want at all. So me talking for him, I feel like sometimes runs us into a problem because people think that I'm manipulating the situation when that's not the case at all. These are conversations that we've had, and sometimes he doesn't feel comfortable expressing himself. So then I end up talking because he's not comfortable.
I can see how it would be seen that way, but to me, at the end of the day, as long as what I'm doing or what we're doing is right before the Lord, it doesn't matter what anyone else says.
Yeah, that's easier said than done. I hear you, and yeah, you're right. That's the truth. But
now, would you say, based on me reading from Leading the Family, and then if you look at providing for the family, wouldn't you say that's basically a similar description, just with stuff added and stuff taken away?
Oh, yeah. And the thing about it is, it is a lot. Because, okay, so to reveal...
Because as a man, I can't take a day off.
You can.
No, what I'm saying is...
You don't feel like you can?
And I'm not speaking from the stance of... oh, as a man, it's hard or it's easy, and then women, they have it like this. But for me, I feel like I can't afford to take a day off. I've gotten better at not allowing my mind to move faster than my lips, because I've gotten better at writing stuff down. Like, okay, I'm gonna ask her about this, or we're gonna talk about that, and this, that, and the third. And then now it's in a space of one of the exercises that I do is, okay, I'll collect for a whole week, and then by the time the week is over, we'll spend 3 nights just dumping. Okay. Hey, what about this? Hey, what about that? Hey, I wrote this down. Hey, I've written this down. Hey, I've notated this. I've notated that. And then I'll bring it back to you and say, tell me what you think.
Okay. I didn't know you were doing that.
Is what I try to do, because I might have a golden idea or $1 million idea in my mind. And if I don't put it down, it'll get to a point to where it'll be forgotten. And then that might have been the one piece or thing for us to investigate in that we could add as a skill set to what we have going on. Because I know one of the biggest things that I tell people, that I'm not going to say that we've perfected it, but we're starting to get into the habit of studying it, which is, again, a gem, credit report and understanding how to read your credit report and understanding how to fix your credit. Because when you're kingdom building, you can't build the kingdom being broke.
True. And I'm gonna redirect us back because I was thinking what we've kind of veered off into just the marriage in and of itself versus the aspect of our age difference. But so many of these things because okay, I'm really well grounded and you look 30 but you act like an old man. So therefore we're kind of equal in footing in terms of how we deal with things. One of the things we dealt with in the beginning of our relationship when you first moved down here was the fact that you were an excessive saver. Your parents had instilled in you that you needed to save all of your money and be very frugal. But you didn't necessarily agree with that all the time. So when you got down here, I kind of stepped back and let you just spend your money however you wanted to.
I ran the race.
Yeah. And
it was a giant marathon.
And you bought my first birthday that we spent together. He came down November 1st of 2020. My birthday was in February. He took me to Target and bought me a $200 pair of headphones. That was my first gift. He bought me a bunch of cars. Like, we've had so many cars. This, matter of fact, the car we have now is the first car that I chose since we've been together. But it was like he saw that in his house. His dad has bought his mom a zillion cars. If she wants to do so, that's his example. But when he got down here, I had to just step back and allow him to blow his money.
That flow.
Because if you've been in a situation where you didn't have the freedom to do what you wanted to do with your money, I needed him to see, hey, this is why we should be saving money. So like later on, like I think we were like 2 years in at that point, and it was like either right before or right after we got married. And he was like, okay, babe, I've been thinking about all the money that we've spent over the time that we've been together. And we really need to look at everything that we spent money on. And I was like, yeah, no, I don't want to do that. And yeah, I'm 52, he's 30. And at that time, I had just turned 50.
She was looking good, girl.
Thank you, babe.
Like
thank
a bacon and eggs.
Thank you. But in the reality of it, when he said we're going to look at the finances and the money we spend, I'm looking at him like, no, we not. I don't want to do that. I don't want to look at it because, to be honest, even though I manage the household bills and make sure everything gets paid, he's a better saver than I am. So putting my business in the street, I had a ticket I had a ticket turned into a warrant last September 2024. And when that ticket turned into a warrant, it was like almost $3,000 to pay this ticket off. And I felt like the judge was not cooperative, so I just kind of didn't pay it. Now, hindsight being 2020, I realized, and my daughter reminded me, there were plenty of times and opportunities to pay this ticket. We had the money several times, and when I would pray about it, I didn't get this release to pay it. So I think there was a greater lesson in it, in what happened later on. But in December of 2024, December 30th to be exact, I went to jail on this warrant and stayed there for 36 days. Well, in those 36 days, my husband, who had left his parents' house, moved in with his girlfriend, who turned into his fiance, who turned into his wife, had never had to do anything on his own. And so for 36 days, he had to make sure the lights stayed on, manage the house, feed himself, manage whatever bills that were coming in the house. He had to do all of it. And he went through withdrawals, turmoil, all types of stuff in those 36 days. And take it from there on your end, because I wasn't at the house with you. I just know how you looked when I came home, but I wasn't at the house with you.
I was cooked.
You got to elaborate. Saying you were cooked is not enough.
You know how people say they put, what is it? Put pickles in the potato salad?
You're supposed to.
No, what's
raisins?
Yeah, I was a raisin in a potato salad. I really realized how much my wife meant to me when I wasn't able to, like, the song Sweet Caroline, touching you, touching me, that connection, like stuff that I didn't really value and respected in that moment, it really hit home. But yeah, it's definitely.
I need you to talk about the experience, because that's the reason why I brought it up.
It was tough. I learned a lot. Like, I was in God's face strong, which I'm not gonna say I've gotten worse, but I know my faith was tested, because there was a lot of options. There was a lot of things that I could have did during that time period. I could have picked up a bottle for 36 and a half days. I could have experimented with weird stuff for 36 and a half days. I mean, literally, I was in a whole house with 2 other people, and when they left, I could have been like, wife locked up in a trailer by myself. Ain't no telling. I just know I don't want to be there again.
And the thing about it is, in that moment, he literally was stretching money like you wouldn't believe, because the basics of what his parents taught him, specifically his father, kicked in, and he was stretching little bits of money to last for. I would call him thinking he was broke. He'd be like, "Oh no, I got $200. Oh no, I got $300." And I'm like, "How you? What?" So it was like realizing that I have to make sure that I have money, because I got to feed our dogs. I have to feed myself. I have to make sure we have lights. I have to be able to do X, Y, and Z. And so, but that was a really serious test on our marriage, because I was having that song say wild thoughts, because I don't know what you're doing. I'm not there, so I don't know what's going on. I don't know anything.
Cell block D.
No. We was
pod
40.
40.
Could nobody mess with room 40, bro. That don't start. Don't start me talking about room 40, god doggone.
Room 40.
That's it, bro. Room 40. But no, so it was a lot. Yeah, 40 in the Bible means to wait.
Periods of testing, trial, and spiritual preparation.
Yes.
Leading to a transformation or new beginning.
Yes.
So when you think about it, it appears frequently, often making transitions in individuals or groups, and can be interpreted as a time of probation or judgment.
I didn't see it as, and it's funny you said that, because I was in jail, but I didn't see it as judgment. I felt like it was a spiritual transition for myself and my husband. I feel like I grew a lot spiritually. And don't get it twisted. When I say, my husband will tell you, I pray over the grapefruit at the grocery store. Mm-hmm. So I am very much heavy into my faith. But what I do know is that
you're gonna lay hands on all the banks in Georgia
and tell them ATMs release the funds.
And
Jesus.
they gonna flood God is giving you your bark back, but no, they gonna flood the no doc loans. But no, they will flood the no doc loans that don't have to be paid back into to this account.
In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
But no, all jokes aside, it was a time of testing and spiritual growth, and it was because it was a lot went on, and a lot of praying, a lot of me and my roommate. Shout out to Yaya. Matter of fact, girl, if you listen to this, I need you to call me. But shout out to my roommate.
Caller number 1, call in. But not when you finish that, I'm gonna interject. Do you want me to do it now or do you want me to wait?
No, I mean you're good. Go ahead, because that was my shout out.
Really in that moment, I can honestly say, for the 36 and a half days that you were locked up, it really made me look at our marriage in a totally different light.
Elaborate.
And the reason why I say that is, we talk about we talk about Jeff Bezos, we talk about Elon Musk, we talk about Donald Trump, we talk about all of these people, and we have all of these examples of what to do and what not to do with your money. And that's one of the biggest things, like Apostle talked about. Wherever the enemy hits you the hardest is where you're destined to be great at.
And you know what? Pause right there.
Go ahead.
That's why I feel like, number one, this podcast, because I was led that we were supposed to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, people would say, y'all need a podcast. Why don't y'all have a podcast? We used to hear that. For the first 2 years of our relationship, we heard that a lot. I didn't want to do the podcast until after we got married, but for the first 2 years of our relationship, all we heard is, y'all should have a podcast. Y'all did a podcast. Did a podcast. And then two, I think that we get hit a lot in our marriage because I'm a certified Christian counselor. My husband is
a 15-year photographer, kind of off and on a little bit.
I wasn't going to say that. But what I told somebody before was that I am a mentor to women, and when my husband comes, he will do the mentoring to the men. And this was before I met him. And so as a couple,
she told me how to day kiss.
Oh, Jesus. As a couple, I know that we have a ministry to married couples. And so a lot of times we get challenges in our marriage because as we overcome these things, we're able to help other people. And I know that to be the case because of where we're tried and tested at. Again, going back to Big Nene, shout out to Miss Ambush. But she said something today that hit me in my throat only because of just things that my husband and I have dealt with. And what she said was, a lot of times when you have not ever been loved properly, or you haven't been loved in a way that satisfies your need for love, when you get love that satisfies that, you don't know how to receive it. And so you begin to self-sabotage that situation because you're trying to now push this person away or alienate this person. And then when they do step away, because you've done all these things of self-sabotaging, now you can beat yourself up. Now you can self-loathe. Now you can say, see, I knew I wasn't good enough. See, I knew they didn't really love me. When the reality is you murdered it. You self-sabotaged it. And so I think that tends to happen in our relationship a lot, where my husband will start to second guess his position as my husband and then start doing silly things that are damaging to the marriage. And so, but I think it's that older woman, younger man. And because I've dealt with a whole lot in my history, and he's always talking about wanting to make sure that everything is good with me because of everything I've gone through. He wants to make my life better, but that you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself, because then if you fail at something or if it doesn't go exactly how you want it to go, then you start doing crazy stuff. And I'm like, listen, you can't do that. Let's just go on the journey. Let's just be a couple, and I don't expect you to be my Donald Trump. I don't need a what's that watch that you not a Audemars Piguet, but what's the other one? What's the other watch that you were talking about?
I mean, there's different.
A Millie, what's it called, babe? You know, the Millie watch.
I mean, so you got APs, what is Audemars Piguets. You got Rich and Millie.
Yeah. So you don't have to buy me a Rich and Millie. I don't care.
So I mean, yeah, you got your Rich and Millies. You have you have a little bit. Well, I guess a shift, but to realign. Like you have your
You don't have, but I don't want you to name all the watches, babe.
I mean, it's
that as an example.
Yeah, no, it's different ones, but the
bottom line is, I don't need a Rolex, I don't need a Richard Mille, I don't need an AP, but you would buy me those things because in your head I deserve them. And when you can't live up to that expectation, like you told me yesterday, sometimes I think that you deserve better than me, or I don't deserve you. And that self tear down makes it hard because you start trying to push me away, and that becomes hurtful. When the reality of it is, I'm extremely happy overall with our relationship and our marriage. So I don't want you to be somebody else. I don't want you to be the millionaire. I want us to make our fortune together, and you don't have to shower me with all this stuff because I don't really want it. I mean, I'm the person that would buy a diamond studded watch band for my Apple Watch because I would much rather wear my Apple Watch and change the band than to go buy an expensive all total together watch, because I'm a nerd and I want the electric watch on my arm. But so it's like finding that balance of where you don't feel so overwhelmed that you start picking yourself apart. And then by picking yourself apart, it then hurts us as a couple.
That is a true statement.
I need you to elaborate.
I mean, again, it goes back to what you were talking about with, you don't really want to add any more pressure, or me as an example, add pressure where it's not needed. Because the Bible verse says, thoughts of the Most High, anything that, I'm trying to think, what's it?
You misquoting the scripture?
Yeah, the thing that talks about, exalt itself of the Most High.
Oh, putting down every imagination that exalts itself.
Cast
down every imagination that exalts itself against the knowledge of the Most High God.
So it's like, if God doesn't want that, or God's word doesn't say that, then that's not what I am.
And so putting that pressure on yourself tends to hurt us.
Tends to cause me to do dumb things that I know are wrong, but still, like a battle with the flesh daily. Like it says, we don't rule against
flesh. We battle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, and rulers in high places. And so I'm often having to now realizing that, hey, you got to stop putting this pressure on yourself because it causes harm. It's like you're sabotaging the thing that you say you desire, you want. I believe overall we have a really good marriage. As my husband has been so known to say, our weirds match. And so we can sit up for an hour and laugh at absolutely nothing.
Rice and peas, the heads from Leo, Water Boy, all of that stuff. But that's the beauty of really being evenly yoked. Like when I was at work, I was like, babe, I really want some watermelon.
And that was the craziest one. And I think in the way that day turned out, kind of, it really just blew me away, because after that, it was like, that wasn't necessarily the greatest day in the world. But I'm driving home behind a watermelon truck, and I'm like, I should follow this man and see if I can't talk him out of one of these watermelons.
Should have had me with you. It would have happened.
And I just kept driving because I had my grandson with me, so it wasn't like I could pop out and...
You couldn't pop out and show him?
I couldn't pop out and show him. I had to just continue to drive where I was driving.
You ain't no certified Jesus lover. You gonna up the score on him?
Yeah, you know what?
Nah.
So I had to just go. And then when he got home, or when I picked him up from work, he was like, man, you know what I want? A watermelon. And I'm like, bro, I was just driving behind a watermelon truck thinking the same thing, that I hadn't had a watermelon in a while. And then that prompted this entire discussion about watermelons. To wrap it all up, I don't think that age has as much to do with it as faith-based and similarities. Like, for me, our shared faith is a big deal, and our commitment to do what God says. Again, I'm quicker to submit to God than my husband is. I ain't gonna hold you. I'm quicker to say, okay, Lord, what do you want? And he's gonna be like, okay, I gotta go talk to God now. Because being the head of the household is like God, then him, then me, then the kids. So it's like we have to, that's the order that I expect it to go in. And I don't know if that's the pressure of having to really consult with God, because a lot of times he'll say something to me and I'll say, babe, did you pray about it? Babe, did you talk to God about it? And I'm that's my constant redirect is, okay, babe, I hear you. Did you go to God about that? Or he'll ask me a question and I'm like, okay, did you pray about that at all? Because I want him to, okay, thank you, Holy Spirit. This is the problem, is that a lot of the things he's trying to take on himself, you're trying to take on yourself, when if you would go to God and let him be the heavy, let him take the pressure off, a lot of these things that you're trying to do, if you allow God to be the instructor of those things, it wouldn't be so hard. Because it's like, okay, if God is the heavy, like if he's the decision maker, then I'm just submitting to God and doing what he wants me to do, following his instructions. So it's like me to my husband and my husband to God. I follow him as he follows Christ. So as long as you do that part of the submission, then everything else that we come together to do will be easy. But you taking on this pressure of saying, oh, I got to do this for my wife, and I can't do this for my wife, and I can't do this for my wife. And then battling things in silence instead of expressing to me your pitfalls and your failures so that I can help pray. You're making it harder on yourself. And that's where failures or mistakes come from, because you're not being honest about what you're struggling with. And I think that's a big deal. Say something, though. You over there scrolling, looking for stuff.
Oh, just trying to do a little bit of learning about, but it goes back to when I was talking about the 36 and a half days. It's like, I really in that moment realized we got to start saving. We got to invest. Because when you look at examples of what to do and what not to do in those areas, most of the wealthy class, when it comes to stuff of that nature, they have accounts for that.
Oh, you mean like the ticket? In other words, in your head, if we'd have had money saved, which is true, if we'd have had money saved, the stuff that we were dealing with, we wouldn't have dealt with. But let's just be realistic. At that point, God had sent us on a journey. And we had gone on a journey from the time we left the house in Griffin the first time to the time we got back to Griffin, and I subsequently went to jail, and we have moved from Griffin to another city in Georgia. In that time, everything we did was not orchestrated by us. So I think, again, putting the pressure back on God.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff.
Because there were some things that you were like, oh, I messed up. Where at? You did everything God told you to do. So where were you messing up at? You didn't mess up. God took us on a journey.
And you can't negate it.
Right. And when you negate it, then the pressure falls back on you. And now you're feeling like a failure. Like, I know my husband felt like a failure because his wife went to jail. And I never wanted you to feel like some type of failure, because every time you would talk about paying the ticket, my response was, no, babe, we got time. It's good. We're good. We're good. It's good. I pushed it off. And some of it was me, but a lot of it was me praying about it and having God tell me, no, take care of this first. And so even down to, we got 2 tax returns within a few months of each other. We got our 2023 taxes in December of 2024. And then we turned around when I went to jail and we got another tax return. Well, at the time that we got that other one, yeah, I could have paid the ticket, but we had rent to pay and bills to pay. And so it was like, okay, let's pay these. And so I feel like there were some people that I had to minister to, and I feel like I wouldn't change the situation. I would not go back and not, if I could have avoided it in real time, okay, but looking back, I wouldn't change anything that happened, because I feel like it exposed some weaknesses that we have to deal with. It exposed some chinks in our armor, like, for example, the need to save money, the need to, which we knew that anyway, the reality of not making decisions on our own without God, and taking our conversations and actually praying about it versus, oh, God hear us talking. He know. No, he wants us to humble ourselves and actually come to him. And so that is a thing.
That is. Because in everything, you have to give it back to him because he's the source. Everybody else is just a resource.
And so in summing all of this up, I think that our age difference, at least for us, isn't as big of a deal as people might think. And this isn't my first May-December relationship. The previous relationships, the guys were always older than me. So my daughter's dad, baby Robin, her dad was 14 and a half years older than me. And a lot of times he would kind of give me these young lady moments, standing on this thing that, oh, I'm older than you. I think that was in the beginning of the relationship. And then towards the end, God rest his soul, we were more equally footed in terms of you not looking at me as this quote unquote younger woman. But so the age gap between myself and my husband is not nowhere near as much of a big deal as it is how we navigate through our marriage. Like, I've made jokes in when we first started talking and he was talking about being serious about the relationship. My response was, boy, you 12. What am I gonna do with you? You 12. That was my response all the time. Like, I tried to put him back in the box. Like, I was like, yeah, no, you're a baby. I have kids close to your age. What am I gonna do with that? That was my response in the beginning. But then after giving in to the fact that I actually had feelings for him and then moving forward in the relationship, realizing that we're more alike than we are different.
That is a true statement also. I mean, we do have a lot in common in our age. I think that's what really makes the marriage and the mesh beautiful is the age difference, because there's a lot that I can learn from you and there's a lot that you can learn from me.
Yeah, I do learn a lot from you. And people would think not because of the age difference, but that's not true. So y'all, as they said on this old show from back in the day, I'm glad we had this time together. I think that was Carol Burnett for now I'm really dating myself, but I think that was Carol Burnett, if I'm not mistaken. But we are going to tell y'all love, peace, and hair grease, and we're going to sign off. But tune in next week, same bat time, same back channel, Tuesdays at 6 on the D.O.D radio network to hear what type of shenanigans that we got going on this time. We love y'all.
Peace, love, and hair grease.
Stole my line.
You have been listening to Being Unboxed on the D.O.D radio network. Best self, best life, best radio.